Someone record? Okay, I see us recording. Thank you. Okay, so today's agenda, we will shortly begin our workshop session. I just have a few opening comments before we introduce our speakers for the day. Today's focus is from policy to practice, supporting quality and expanded learning programs. We'll have a few closing comments, and then we'll introduce our field spotlight. And I'll go into a little more detail a little later about what field spotlights are. And then all of you will have the opportunity to participate in interactive breakout sessions. If you participated in our ELO-P academies in the past, we used to offer times for regional breakouts. This round of academies will offer breakouts, but in a different style. And so folks will kind of choose your own adventure, and you decide which breakout topic you want to join. And so some of our team will be facilitating those, and we hope that you are able to stay and connect with others throughout the state and network, share promising practices, etc. And then our Zoom will end at 12 p.m. and that is our time for today. So I'll go ahead and just a few comments here. So we offer these academies with shared learning spaces, right? And so what that means is these are collaborative spaces that we often update materials and content and resources throughout this presentation. And so we will be sharing a Google Doc in the chat, and the Google Doc will have a lot of resources that are lifted today, in addition to offering some note space. If there's gems that you hear during the presentation, or if there's maybe some ideas or next steps, you can add your notes and kind of track them throughout the workshop for today. And also, we do that to also support our participants because folks are not able to download the Zoom chat. For security purposes, we do not have that enabled. And so with that being said, we offer that Google Doc so that way you're still able to access resources. And you can still use the Zoom chat to ask questions or to comment on things, or drop some gems in there if there's things that you want to share with others. But we will be dropping that doc as a resource for everyone during this workshop. And then, as I mentioned, the presentation slides will be available in PDF format on our website, as well as the recording of today's workshop. And any other resources that are lifted, we'll do our best to have those linked on our website as well. So you'll want to make sure that you go back to our website to access those resources within 24 to 48 hours. Registration is still open for days 2, 3, and 4, which is tomorrow, Thursday, September 12th. We're focusing on inclusive expanded learning environments. Next Tuesday, we resume the academies, and we're focusing on leveraging multiple funding streams to build quality, one comprehensive style expanded learning programs. And then our academies conclude on Wednesday, September 18th, with supporting our youngest learners with quality expanded learning programs. So spread the word. There's still space to register for the academies tomorrow and throughout next week. You can, our team has the bit.ly in the resource doc that we'll share, or you can scan the QR code and it'll take you directly to our website so that you can register for those. And then also, if you have more in the weeds questions, office hours is a great place to drop those questions, right? Attending office hours, you get to learn of CDE updates, and we get to connect with others from the field and share some promising practices. And so fall ELO-P office hours will begin at the end of this month on September 27th. And we'll go through October and November. And so you can scan the QR code here. The link to register is also in that notes doc that we'll be sharing with you all. So we hope to see you in fall ELO-P office hours. And of course, please stay connected with us. This is a great way to, if you join our listservs, to receive our newsletters. You can follow us on all of our social media platforms, stay connected, and stay in touch with all the updates, ELO-P, expanded learning, youth development, whole child, the list goes on, right? And so stay connected with the California After School Network. And you will also hear us mention the System of Support for Expanded Learning. The SSEL is an ecosystem of leaders and a support system, right, that are here to support our LEA leaders and practitioners supporting young people and families throughout California. So you can use this bit.ly or scan the QR code to stay connected with your system of support for expanded learning in your region or in your community. And before we jump into the presentation, one last big thing. We want to introduce, some of you might have heard of our pedagogical methodology that we have adopted, and this is kind of the driver, right? And so we invite you to read this. I'll kindly read it out loud for folks that might just need to hear it out loud. And as we read this, this is kind of what the mindset, or perhaps like a mental model, that we are hoping folks will embrace as we move on through the next 4 sessions of our workshop academies, to, not just hear and listen to the content, but really apply the content with this methodology in mind. So we believe every child, youth, and the adults that live, love, and work with them deserve just and affirming spaces and opportunities that enrich, empower, enlighten, educate, and elevate them. We know that learning happens in every context, and young people are assets in supporting their own learning and co-creating the solutions to the issues and challenges they face. Expanded learning and out-of-school time spaces can be cultivated by anchoring in some core beliefs and shared mindsets. We are rooted in love, and love is shown in our actions and our words. We are asset anchored and driven. We are aspirational in our mindsets, words, and actions. We are connected by our differences because that is what gives us strength and creates our collective. The appreciation of every culture, language, and lived experience is what we leverage to grow and nurture our collective spaces. We make decisions based on elevating the intrinsic gifts, talents, and wisdom of those closest to the problems we work collaboratively to solve. We learn by doing, and we grow by reflecting on that learning. And we'll remind folks at the future sessions of our pedagogical methodology. So, thumbs up. Are we ready? All right. So it is my pleasure to introduce our presenters for today. As I mentioned, we will be focusing on policy to practice and how we can use supporting quality and compliance, right, in expanded learning. And so I am happy to introduce Malia Villarreal, a senior specialist from the California After School Network, Leslye Lugo, specialist in policy and outreach at the California After School Network, and Iqbal Badwalz, an education administrator from the Expanded Learning Division at the California Department of Education. Thank you, team. I'll go ahead and pass it on to you now.
All right. Thank you, Melissa, for the introduction. Hi, everyone. My name is Malia Villarreal. As Melissa mentioned, I am with the California After School Network, and I'm a senior specialist, and I work in the policy and outreach side of the house. And I will pass it over to Leslye to introduce herself so we can go ahead and start the presentation for today.
Hey everyone, Leslye Lugo with the California After School Network, specialist with the policy and outreach team. Super excited to be here and excited for today. Go ahead,
Yes.
Malia.
Thanks, Leslye. All right, so for today, what we're doing is typically for the first day of the ELO-P Academies, if you've ever joined, we usually go over nuts and bolts. And since we've done that for the last several academies, we're going to quickly go over some of the nuts and bolts. So we'll go over high level, what is expanded learning, an ELO-P overview. We'll do some policy updates. There is some hot off the press trailer bill updates that we'll be sharing today. And then we'll be passing over to Iqbal to go over some key dates and upcoming compliance and monitoring items for today. And then today's learning structure, we really hope that you engage in the chat, share those ideas, thoughts, resources, promising practices, right? So Leslye and I have some knowledge, right? But all of you, right? There's 323 of us in this room today. All of you have so much knowledge and wisdom, and we really hope that you share in this space. You're going to hear, right, later on from Tracey on some amazing, promising practices that she's implemented. There'll be times later on to look at to go into breakout sessions and to discuss amongst yourselves as well. And we'll have some reflection questions sprinkled throughout today as well. So we'll be sharing content, but definitely want you to really kind of sink your teeth into it and to also share back into this space as well. All right, so we're not doing the breakout sessions, yes, but we wanted to show you what is going to be in the breakout sessions later. So there'll be a room that is where you can learn more about the system of support and how you could really optimize working with the system of support. Sometimes it's hard to know who do you go to for what, right? And so as you're listening to today's information, maybe keep that in mind where maybe that's a room you want to go into and have some more conversations. If you're maybe new and you think that Leslye and I don't cover enough on the ELO-P basics, you can go into a room later on to have some more discussions. There's going to be another room where you can go with Iqbal and others and talk about promising practices around FPM and audits. And then if you want to dive deeper into those policy updates and the SOC code, you can join Leslye and I later to have some more discussions in a breakout session. Okay, and then some questions to consider as you're listening to the content today, which is what stands out from this session? Take notes of key phrases and quotes. What is inspiring you? What does this impact you? Or how does this impact you? And how do you think about your work and or your role? What are strategies from today that you might implement within your own expanded learning program? All right, and then there's other opportunities to get more granular that we won't be doing today, but we have linked here the Spring 2004 ELO-P Academy Nuts and Bolts. Like I said, we're not going to go super deep into that today. You can review the CDE FAQs. You can always join office hours. We're always learning in those spaces together. You can always reach out to the CDE help desk, engage the system of support, and definitely watch those fireside chats. All right, so what is expanded learning?
All righty. So expanded learning, right, defined in Ed Code, means before school, after school, summer, or intersession learning programs that focus on developing the academic, social, emotional, and physical needs and interests of pupils through hands-on, engaging learning experiences. It is the intent of the legislature that expanded learning programs are pupil-centered, results-driven, include community partners, and complement, but do not replicate learning activities in the regular school day and school year, right? And so all of our programs look very different, but this is the official Ed Code definition. And so want to elevate, right, that expanded learning is a component in our superintendent's initiative in transforming California schools. We are really critical, right, as well as all of these other components, right, and programs to serve our students in California. So elevating, right, California's programs, you can see here in this map, we're showcasing programs that existed before ELO-P. So you can just take into context, right, after ELO-P, we are likely all over, right, all over serving the state of California. You can see here also the different regions that were broken up into, right, and see where there are programs. We boast in California the largest expanded learning network, right, system. We have programs that are high rated, right, that are school-based and school-linked. And this is something that is really amazing and compared to the rest of the country, and we're really fortunate to have our programs. All right, so we've talked a little bit about the system of support for expanded learning, and this is who we are, right? So the CDE Expanded Learning Division, California Department of Ed, Expanded Learning Division, right? We have 16 county offices of education. You can see them listed here. The California After School Network, right? Us, ASAP Connect, and the SSCL STEAM hubs, right? We are all here to support you and your programs in expanded learning. So something to note, right? High quality programs create conditions that support positive outcomes, consistent with the science of learning and development. This right here, our quality standards, are a tool and a resource developed by CDE and CAN that can help support your programs, right? It's another tool that you can use. And so the types of quality standards that exist are the points of service quality standards and the programmatic ones. Again, this is a resource and a tool for you to be able to look at your programs and identify any things that you want to improve on, right? Because in our programs, we have this culture of continuous quality improvement, right? And so you can identify which standards you'd like to focus on that support your programs. And so now we have an opportunity to reflect on some questions. So in the chat, feel free to share what standard you're focusing on for this year for some of your programs. Feel free to share what is a quality standard that you've already focused on for this year, and which ones that you're really interested in focusing on for future years, right? We understand that all of these quality standards, right, a lot of them integrate and intermingle. However, it's great to kind of see them separately so you can focus on, just be more focused on some of the things that you may want to improve in your programs. And so I see in the chat, some folks have elevated the safe and supportive environment standard, right? That's a really great one, especially if you're starting off programs, right? That is a foundational standard to start off. There's, I see quality staff, right? Definitely. Diversity, access, and equity. Also understanding that diversity, access, and equity exists like in all standards, right? So it's part of all of our standards because we know that designing at the margins, right, really makes it so that we are serving all youth and all their different needs. I see youth leadership. Yes, youth leadership and voice, one of my favorite standards. Yes, great. Thank you so much for sharing. Skill building, yes. Awesome. Thank you all for sharing. Okay. Passing it on over to you, Malia.
Thanks, Leslye. And I can't keep up with the chat. I want to say, yay, celebrate. I want to hit all the emojis, but I can't keep up, which is amazing to see in the chat. Okay, so moving on to this slide, right? This is, if you've joined any of our presentations before, you probably have seen this slide. And so this just lays out the different funding sources that are here, or state and federally funded for expanded learning. We have multiple state funded sources. We have a couple of federally funded sources as well. We're very fortunate here in California. So we just wanted to make this available for you to see. Sometimes it's nice to see it in one snapshot. So we'll go on to the next slide. And this here is for fiscal year 23-24. And this kind of puts it into perspective of how much funding is actually in California for expanded learning. And spoiler alert, for 24-25, if you didn't read our policy newsletter, if you haven't heard from the budget for this year, this governor and the legislature did commit to the $4 billion again, which we'll get into a little bit later in the presentation. So yay for that. Celebrations all around, all the celebratory emojis. And we'll go a little bit more into detail later on that. But I wanted to take a pause and touch on a few things for this slide and really ground us when it comes to the state of expanded learning in California in this moment in time, in this moment in history. So California After School Network, we're one of 50 after school networks in the country. So there's after school networks in every state. And Leslye and I have the opportunity to join policy calls with other states regularly, right, every month. And so you have Alabama in the room, you have Missouri in the room, you have Alaska in the room, you have New York, and we get updates on, federal updates. We hear from other states on what's going on across the country, right? And sometimes, to be honest, we feel really bad giving updates about California, right? Because it's like, oh, here we go again, another celebration about the $4 billion, right? And so the updates that we hear from these other states is that, right, they're fighting to not just get any kind of line item, right, in their budget, but they're also fighting against things like their government trying to completely defund education, like just education, right? Not even just trying to get a line item for expanded learning, but education. And with these ESSER funds that are sunsetting, right, you're seeing programs closing across the board, across the country. And it's really sad to see and to have to hear that, right? We're constantly in every meeting that we're in with them, those are the updates we're hearing. And it's really sad. And I know in California, we're having our growing pains right now. We're going to give a lot of updates on all these little changes. And I know we're always throwing new changes at you, I think, every time we see you, and apologize for that. And I know you're working really hard to make those programs go. But I wanted to put these things into perspective. It was recently shared with me, and Leslye and I did our research on this, but California's expanded learning budget as a whole, right, is about the same as Maine's general fund budget, right, for the whole state of Maine. Just to kind of put it into perspective of how much funding we have in expanded learning and the opportunity we have to really transform lives in California. And it is amazing. And so if you're feeling the weight of that, this is why, right? This is why. And so one, I just want to say thank you for all the work that you're doing. And if you're feeling the weight of it, and if you're feeling the weight of all the changes, this is why, right? There's a lot going on. And if you're new to expanded learning and to the expanded learning field, welcome to the family. In the chat, if we can say welcome to the fam, we are a fun bunch. And I wanted to draw your attention to the orange pillar, because California has a rich history of doing expanded learning programming before ELO-P came around. And they were doing it off of that smaller pillar for a long time. And it was based in that positive youth development. So there's a lot of wisdom in this room and across the state. There's a lot of research. So make friends here, right, in this room. In those breakout sessions, exchange contact information. You're not alone. And a lot of work was getting done off of minimal budgets. So I just wanted to uplift that in this room and share that with you all. It was something that I've been reflecting on a lot. It was something Leslye and I talk a lot about with each other. And I just wanted to remind us all of just kind of where we're at and maybe why we're feeling what we're feeling as well. So we'll move on to the next slide. I'll get off my soapbox, but I just wanted to reground us in all of that. All right, so ELO-P overview. Okay, so the intent of ELO-P, right? So we had this rich history of expanded learning programming. Pandemic happened, a lot of programs stepped up, and it has been noticed for a long time. And so LEAs got the benefit from billions of dollars in funding to holistically support students before school, after school, and during summer and non-school days. And this unprecedented funding allocation goes to all LEAs that serve students in grades TK through 6 to ensure that all students in California have equal access to comprehensive and transformative expanded learning opportunities. And we have linked here to the ed code in case you would like that ed code there. We'll go to the next slide. And then some ELO-P key details here was that, originally Newsom's May budget revise in May 21 was when this was announced. And it was establishing this new ongoing funding source for expanded learning programs. And really it was the intent that this wasn't going to be a separate program from that orange pillar that I was talking about and I was pointing out, right? That ACES and 21st century funding, it's not meant to be separate, right? And you may have heard this single comprehensive program, and everyone's kind of trying to figure out what does that mean and what's the definition for that. But really what it is it's just your expanded learning program, right? Like your expanded learning program, and we have all these different fundings, and it should really just work as one. And I know it's easier said than done, but it's really intended to work with all the different funding sources that you have on school as much as possible. And the intent is to offer all students access to expanded learning programs and really prioritizing unduplicated students.
All righty, so we can jump into an overview of some more elements and expectations, right? So for an ELO-P program, you have your program plan, right? Which is based on 11 out of the 20 quality standards that we talked about earlier. This needs to be reviewed and updated at least every 3 years, and it needs to be approved by an LEA's governing board in a public meeting and posted on the LEA's website. LEAs are encouraged to collaborate with community-based organizations, and program elements are similar to ACES and 21st century programs. Days and hours of operations you can see here. So all school days in person before and or after school, no less than 9 hours. Core day plus expanded learning equals 9 hours, right? Non-school days, in person at least 30 days, no less than 9 hours, inclusive of extended school year days and Saturdays. Students have to be in person, but programming can be provided in a variety of formats. Some more ELO-P elements and expectations. So here are some frontier exceptions, right? And so frontier programs are in designated geographic areas, right? And right here defined, right? That means a school site in an area that has a population density of less than 11 persons per square mile. That's what frontier means, right? The program requirements are no less than 8 hours of combined instructional time, recess meals, and in-person before after school expanded learning opportunities per instructional day. No less than 8 hours of in-person expanded learning opportunities on at least 30 non-school days during intersessional periods. Some other general ELO-P elements and expectations. All students can participate. There is no attendance requirement. Some staffing requirements match the ACES and 21st century, which means ratios must be 20:1, except for TK, that is 10:1. Staff must meet the district IA requirement. And there is the offer and access component, right? That's defined in ed code. And like we said, in one of the breakouts, we have an opportunity to kind of dive in deeper around some more of these details. Next slide. The family fees and prioritization. right? So for ACES and 21st century priority enrollment, so folks that are eligible for free and reduced price meals, this also includes migrant and homeless youth and foster youth. For ELO-P unduplicated pupils, this means folks that are eligible for free and reduced meals, still including migrant and homeless youth, foster youth, English learner, and homeless youth prioritized for intercession programs. And so fees applicable to ACES 21st century and ELO-P. You cannot charge fees for foster youth, students eligible for free and reduced meals, including migrant and homeless youth. This means that technically fees can be charged to English learners if they do not fit into one of the other categories, right? If you're running as separate programs. Family fees should be on a sliding scale and based on ability to pay. And finally, the provide access to transportation, right? And LEA receiving an ELO-P apportionment. Transportation shall be provided for any student who attends a school that is not operating an ELO-P program to attend a location that is operating an ELO-P program and to return to their original location or another location that is established by that LEA. And I'll pass it on back to Malia. Oh, I see we have a hand up.
Leslye, I think we're trying to address the questions in the chat. So I think you can keep going forward with the budget update. And so we'll do our best to address them in the chat. And if we can't get to them in the chat, we encourage you to come out and join the breakout rooms to get those questions answered as best as we can.
Awesome. All right. So moving on to the California budget update. So this is our 2024 California legislative budget calendar. So right now, legislative season is pretty much done. So now any bills that have been passed in the legislature have been sent to the governor and are on his desk waiting to be signed. The governor has until September 30th to sign or veto legislation. Next slide. So celebrations, right? So in late June, the governor and legislature reached an agreement on the 2024-25 California budget. So on June 26th, Newsom signed the Budget Act of 2024, also known as AB 107. And he made it clear, right, that he's invested in supporting expanded learning programs. This was a tough budget year, and regardless, we did not lose any funding. So we maintain the $4 billion, and we maintain the existing reimbursement rates for ACES and 21st century programs. Next slide. Thank you, Melissa.
All right. So now we're going to go into the budget trailer bills. And one thing I want to add about the budget piece, which kind of goes back to what I was saying before about how fortunate we are in California, is, as Leslye mentioned, it's a tough budget year, and it's going to continue to be tough budget years. So the fact that we have the $4 billion is incredible, right? Where other departments saw hits and education actually made out really well. The legislature and the governor is committed to education and expanded learning. And I'll show you in different parts of the trailer bills also showed really good indicators that the legislature and the governor is really trying to look at sustainability for ELO-P and expanded learning, which is really good news for us. So I'll point those out here throughout the presentation as well. So high level, what is a trailer bill? So when the budget goes into effect, sometimes laws need to be, addressed or tweaked in order for that budget to go into law, right? Or to be able to implement that budget. So that's what a budget trailer bill is. And so next slide, we'll talk about what you need to know at this point in the season when it comes to budget trailer bills. And so they're categorized in different sections. So you have like K-12, higher ed, housing, and they're heard at the same time as like the budget bill, but they're not beholden to the same timeline as the Budget Act. And so really they can be passed at any point in time, and they can be implemented immediately. And so just something to kind of keep in mind when it comes to budget trailer bills. So let's go to the next slide. Okay, so budget, the trailer bill impacts. So if you've seen our policy newsletter, if you joined office hours, if you've seen fireside chats, you may recognize this first trailer bill, which is SB 153. And these are some updates that we have shared. And this was signed in this past June. And there was a couple of impacts that impacted ELO-P expenditure deadlines, intent to run requirement, things that affected rate 2 LEAs and attendance recovery. And then the hot off the press, there is AB 176 trailer bill. Now this passed the legislature and it's on the governor's desk. I did not check it this morning. I'm not sure if it was signed. It may have been signed, but it should be signed any day now. And so we have some updates for you here today. It's the trailer bill, and if it's at this point, it's because the governor has been in conversations with the legislature and he's most likely going to sign it. And some of them are time sensitive, so we wanted to get them in front of you today. And so some of those are ELO-P expenditure reports and deadlines for prior year funds, and then some small modifications to the attendance recovery language, which we'll get into here in just a sec. Okay, so what was in that first trailer bill was what already existed was the ELO-P apportionments received during the fiscal year 21-22 or 21-22 and 22-23 had to be expended or encumbered by the June 30th date. And so what was updated in that trailer bill is that they needed to be expended by September 30th, 2024. And any unspent funds will be returned to the state. So what was new was that beginning in fiscal year 23-24, ELO-P apportionments must be expended by June 30th of the following fiscal year. And any funds not expended by the school district or charter school by the end of that period shall be returned to the state. We have a table, so I'll go over it in a table, might be easier to understand. So let's go to the next slide. So this is the new trailer bill update, the AB 176. So again, this bill passed the legislature and is on the governor's desk. And the expenditure report deadline. So for the fiscal year 21-22 and fiscal year 22-23, we know that LEAs will be required to submit an expenditure report to CDE after the September 30th, 2024 expenditure deadline. Now, the report is going to be due October 31st, 2024. So that note stock, this is something you're going to write down, highlight, whatever you need to do. This is the date, right? Because in this new trailer bill that will be signed any day now, a local, the LEA that does not submit the final expenditure report shall forfeit all funds allocated for the 21-22 and 22-23 fiscal years, right? So this is going to be really important that you get this report in by that deadline. And this is in this new trailer bill language. This is the ed code here. Now, the California Department of Education, there should have been an email that was sent out with this information. Let's go to the next slide here. This is what the expenditure report website portal looks like. To submit this expenditure report, here is the website and some of the information that you'll need. And if you have any questions, the system of support is here to support you. And here is the email address for you to reach out to if you have any questions. And again, the system of support is here to support you. So again, just wanted you all to take note of that important deadline. The email should have been sent out. If you have any questions, make sure to reach out to the system of support in that email there. Okay, so wanted to go back to these dates in the table form. So you have until June 30th of the following year to for the expenditure deadline, right, for the apportionment year. And then that report is going to be due on September 30th of that following year. So any funds that aren't expended would go back to the state. And if that report isn't submitted by that September 30th date, then all of the funds from that fiscal year would go back to the state. So I hope that's clear. Let's go to the next slide. And in a moment, I'll talk a little bit about where those funds, what bucket of funding or where those funds will go to. So the intent to run ELO-P, this was in that first trailer bill that came out in June. Beginning in fiscal year 25-26, LEAs shall annually declare their operational intent to run an ELO-P to the CDE. And the CDE will provide instructions and forms for this process. So more information to come, as you can see in this picture. We will share this in fireside chats, office hours. Definitely sign up for our newsletter and our policy newsletter. It'll be posted on the CDE website. Any funds that are unspent will go back into rate 2, which I'll talk about in just a sec, but just wanted to remind you that this was signed into law in June and will start for fiscal year 25-26. So for rate 2 LEAs, what was signed in, okay. So for all those funds that are going to come back, right? So anything that wasn't expended, if for some reason the reports don't get put in, if that intent to run an ELO-P program, any of those things, those funds that come back, that good news I was telling you about, all those funds stay within ELO-P. It could have gone to different buckets of funding, but it's staying within ELO-P, and it's going to go to rate 2 LEAs to help with that rate fluctuation, right? So for starting in fiscal year 24-25, return funds shall be used to provide rate 2 a $2,000 per student rate. Now, timeline, that is going to be figured out. I know a lot of people have been asking about that part, but just wanted to note that piece. And then beginning in fiscal year 25-26, as LEAs must annually declare their intent to run ELO-P, that will also go into that bucket. And next slide, I know we have a question of how do we know if you're rate 1 or rate 2? This slide here, and we're running out of time. We have a couple more slides. So these will be available later, but this slide goes over if you're rate 1 or rate 2. And this has to do with your unduplicated pupil population. And this is where you can find that information here. The rates for tier 2, this is where it starts out at. And then whatever monies gets recouped will help get closer to that 2,000 rate for rate 2. And again, we'll have the breakout rooms so we can talk more about this in the breakout rooms as well. So let's go to the next slide. Okay, attendance recovery. On these slides here, in the orange letters, this is what came out in the newer trailer bill language. I just wanted to note that. Everything else came out in the first trailer bill. Okay, so attendance recovery, something important to note. It is optional and voluntary. There's no additional funding for attendance recovery to happen. It could be a component of an expanded learning program, but it doesn't otherwise alter the requirements. And there needs to be immediate supervision of a certificated teacher who is also an employee and who is responsible for the documentation. And then CDE will develop guidance and post this guidance on the website on or before June 30th of 2025. And the next slide. And for attendance recovery programs, implementation, this would begin July 1st, 2025. So it's not happening yet. There's a little bit of time. There's going to be more guidance coming out. So we can take a deep breath. Just want to let everyone know that. And then something to note is that up to 10 days of attendance can be credited for students, and it can be accumulated. It's 1 hour increments that can be accumulated for attendance recovery. The new trailer bill, what was updated in the new trailer bill is they specified the ratio for attendance recovery to be the 1-to-10 ratio for TK and kindergarten, and the 20-to-1 ratio for 1st grade through 12th grade. So just wanted to share that for the new trailer bill that's on the governor's desk. Next slide. We don't have a lot of time to reflect right now, but these are some things that you can kind of reflect and some important pieces in the presentation today. So I'll pass it to Leslye.
All righty, so some legislative updates. All right, so AB 1113, this McCarty bill, this bill was introduced by Assemblymember McCarty and was sponsored by CA3. This 2-year bill was removed from the inactive file and reintroduced with the following amendments. So this has passed the legislature, it is on the governor's desk, and we are waiting for the signature of the governor. And so beginning in 2025-26 school year, this would allow CDE to capture ELO-P access data, which is enrollment, right? Enrollment forms in CalPADS, and may include ACES and 21st Century programs as well. Beginning with the 25-26 school year, CDE will provide guidance and recommendations to LEAs in the collection of pupil participation data for students enrolled in expanded learning programs. There is a group called the California Expanded Learning Research and Evaluation Strategy Committee that has also been discussing details for these recommendations. To look at previous iterations of this bill, you can also click on this link afterwards and learn more about this legislation. Next slide, please. And so there was another bill. This was AB 2112, authored by Mersucci, and this was sponsored by San Diego Unified to address the ELO-P rate 2 fluctuations from year to year. And as you saw from Malia's one of Malia's slides, like rate 2 fluctuates, right? And so this is something that they wanted to address. Unfortunately, this bill was put in suspense. And this bill also was going to convene a stakeholder work group to provide recommendations, right, on various other topics, not just the rate 2, the tier 2 issue. So that's unfortunate. You can also click on here and find more information about this bill. And then our last update, the standard occupational code, the SOC code. And so just a quick overview, we are going to have space in the breakout room to talk more about this. So feel free to join Malia and I to talk more. But we recently submitted a proposal to add a new code to our standard occupational classification code system, which is a federal system that exists that supports in giving information, workforce information. And so we currently do not have a code that represents our field. And so we've submitted a proposal and we're currently in this process. Feel free to chat with us some more if you want to know more. And now I will pass it on over to Iqbal to talk about FPMs.
Thank you, Malia. Thank you, Leslye. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'll be presenting audits and FPM, and as a part of the CDE's oversight role, we perform audits and FPMs. I want to clarify that the audits are performed by independent auditors hired by the district's governing board, and the report is submitted to the governing board, California Department of Education, State Controller's Office, and the respective county. The FPM, the federal program monitoring, is done by the California Department of Education. We have an office in expanded learning that performs FPM, and I will go more in detail. Next, please. So today we are going to discuss key dates for the audits, the FPMs, and new compliance items for audits for FPMs. We are going to also discuss where the resources can be found and how the LEAs are notified of the FPMs. And we are going to discuss some promising practices and what's on the horizon. So please stay tuned because I'll be sharing a personal story as we start talking about the promising practices. Next, please. So these are some of the acronyms we are going to be using, and we thought it will be a good idea to go ahead and provide a list. And when I say the word CDE, I mean California Department of Education. When I use the word CMT, this is a tool we use for FPMs. FPM is a federal program monitoring, and so on. So most of you would already be aware of these acronyms, and the new folks, please take a look at it at your convenience. We'll be sharing this information with you. Next, please. So if you have seen any of the auditors in your LEA, in your district, they are currently auditing for the fiscal year 23-24, which is already completed. And they are required to submit the audit report by December 15th, 2024 by law. And the next year audit guide, 24-25 audit guide, is also posted on the Education Audits Appeal panel if anybody is interested in going and taking a look at it. Next, please. So these are the key dates for FPMs. While 23-24 was being audited, is being audited right now, we are currently auditing 24-25 data. 24-25 online and on-site FPMs are currently being audited. There are about 15 CDE programs that are being reviewed as a part of the FPM, and expanded learning program happens to be just one of them. And why do I discuss that? The reason I discuss that is that our FPM office informs or sends notification to the LEA's superintendents about the forthcoming FPM in 24-25 in May 24. However, what we do is in our office, Program Monitoring Office of the Expanded Learning Division, we reach out to the grantees, grant coordinator, for a couple of reasons. Firstly, there could be a lack of communication between the superintendent and our program, not at the highest level in the school districts. It's an after-school program. Secondly, because we have third-party service providers that are involved and a better communication is required. We also inform our grant coordinators about the statewide training that is being provided in early August every year. Then we also discuss about the opportunities for regional training and any additional assistance that is needed by the LEA. Next, please. So what are the new items that have been added? ACES programs that are charging fees have always been audited. And something new that has been added to 24-25 is that if you're running an ELO-P program and if you're charging fees, it's going to be audited in 24-25 moving forward. It has not been audited for 23-24, but will be audited moving forward. As far as the FPM process is concerned, similar to the way that we perform an FPM of the school districts, we are being monitored by federal monitors every year. And the federal monitors have identified 3 areas that they want us to focus on. They wanted us to add certain elements, certain items to verify that the schools, the LEAs that are using 21st century funds, they have sustainability plans. And they also were reviewing how we verify the program evaluation done by the school districts as a part of their annual program evaluation. And how do the LEAs ensure safety of the students, parents, and the staff? This also included transportation. So we have been kind of more focused on this and internally calibrating so that we are able to also train the field on these three items. Next, please. Okay, we want to be transparent. We want to be helpful. We always have tried to. So the audit guide is available at the Education Audit Appeal Panel, and somebody might be able to put this in the chat. 2425 EXL-P instrument, FPM instrument that we use to verify the compliance with the law is also available at the link available. And finally, we at the Expanded Learning Division has created some additional resources to help the LEA's grantees to show compliance with the 20 items that we review. Those are also available in the third link that is available there. And like I said, these slides would be made available to you. Next, please. Okay, and if you had any questions, this provides the regional assignments. Who Dawn will be performing the FPMs in region 1, 2, 3, Kimberly Montes de Oca in regions 4, 5, 6, Tang Xiong in regions 7 and 10, Juan Sanchez in region 8 and 9, and Man Fan in region 11. If you need additional assistance or if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to these folks. We are a very helpful team to make sure that you come out successful in the FPM. Next, please. Okay, now very soon we are going to start receiving the audit findings. Like I said, the 23-24 year is being audited, and the law requires the auditors to submit the report by December 15th. Once we start getting the audit reports, we are going to be looking at the audit findings. There could be some fiscal findings with fiscal penalties, and Apportionment Office in School Fiscal Services Division is the one that released the funds to you, and they will be making adjustments for any fiscal penalties in the audit findings. We at the Expanded Learning Division will be dealing with the non-compliance audit findings. So our EPCs are going to reach out to you to obtain additional evidence, provide additional compliance assistance, and get the audit finding resolved. Next, please. FPM findings will be reviewed by the FPM. So there would be a 60-day and 30-day period that the LEAs should be uploading the document. This 60 days, 30 days prior to the start of the date of the FPM, the LEAs should be uploading the documents. The PMO reviewer will be reviewing the uploaded documents to CMT, posting helpful comments so that you're able to upload the appropriate documents and to resolve the findings. Our hope is that there are no findings, but your lack of uploading the appropriate documents could result in a finding. So something new that we have started in 24-25 is called dispute resolution process. We will be introducing this during our entrance conference of the FPM as well as the exit conference of the FPM. And we will be giving you the criteria that could be used for dispute, for submitting a dispute in our review. And this dispute needs to be submitted by noon of the last day of the FPM. And then our FPM office is going to review this, and the FPM office has decided to give 15 days to resolve any resolution, any dispute resolution. And so instead of 45 days to resolve the audit findings, we will now be giving 60 days to resolve the audit finding, and it will be discussed at the entrance conference as well as the exit conference. Next, please. So this is an opportunity for me to share my story and explain why this is important for an LEA to be responsive to the reviewers. A few years ago, during COVID, I was assisting one of my colleagues, and we were reviewing one of the districts. The district administrator left the organization, and about 30 days before the FPM, leaving a folder on the desk for the new person to go ahead and complete the FPM. So the new person has already been with the district, but had not been in this role, and she became a little overwhelmed and called us and explained the situation to us. And we explained to her that since you have already been working in the expanded learning program, you know where the documents are, and we can share the requirements with you. And as long as you are responsive to our comments in CMT, we can help you go through this FPM. So she was very motivated. And if you see in the second bullet, there are meeting uploading documents 60 to 30 days prior to the review date. She did that. She called us more often, and we were able to kind of walk her through what was required, and she was able to navigate on document upload. And we especially recommend that do not wait for the last moment, especially on items 9 and 16. These items need additional time, especially if the LEA has contracted out services to third-party providers, and one should start gathering these documents as soon as 60 days prior to the FPM. One should be attending all the statewide FPM trainings, as well as attend regional FPM trainings by PMO. And reach out to the PMO reviewer for any additional assistance you may need. If you do not have access to the CMT, to the CDE monitoring tool, reach out to us and we will try to get you that in advance. Next, please. Okay, along with the promising practices, we also need to discuss the challenges. And the challenges are LEAs lack oversight of third-party service providers. The fund goes to the LEAs and they give it to the third party without adequate contract MOU, or even if the contract MOU is there, it's not being reviewed for proper implementation. Second thing that is missing is that these contracts, they do not have the language that the tracking of the expenditure needs to be done by site. ACES, 21st Century, Community Learning Center and assets, they're all funded by site. They're all grants. So their tracking of expenditures needs to be done by site. And these are the some of the areas which creates additional complications, especially for EXL-P 9 funding direct services to students that we discussed in the last slide. Now, another thing that we have noted is that some LEAs, they wait for the last moment to upload the documents, hoping that the CDE reviewers will not have the time to review the documents and will pass on it. Basically, what happens is that if we do not have the time to review it, it becomes a finding and you get 45 days to go ahead and review it. Now it'll be 60 days to go ahead and review it. Next, please. So what's on the horizon? Like I said, we will start getting the audit findings very soon, somewhere in December, and we will be calling you to resolve these audit findings. By law, the state superintendent of public instruction is required to resolve these audit findings, and we will work with you to resolve this. Please pick up the phone or respond to the email to make sure that the audit finding can be resolved. What we have also added towards the end is, because of the ELO-P funding, we need more reviews. And what we realized was that instead of going to the field, what we will do is go ahead and identify LEAs that have received ELO-P funding, and we will review. We'll have a very limited review. We will ask the LEA to submit the data to us by email instead of in the CMT, and we will review it. We have conducted one limited scope administrative review, and it has been very successful. So more to come on that in the future. Last, please. Okay, outstanding audit or FPM findings. I wanted this to be the last slide. Hopefully you'll be cooperating with us, you'll be responsive, you'll be reaching out to us by phone or by email. If you do not, if the LEA does not, let me put it this way, the LEA will become a grantee not in good standing if the attendance reports were not submitted in time, expenditure reports were not submitted in time, annual outcome-based data was not submitted in time, outstanding audit findings were not resolved by working with us, or outstanding FPM findings were not resolved by working with us. We try to work as much as possible with you, but if these issues are not resolved in a timely fashion, then the applicant and the co-applicant for that grant, they're not eligible for future funding. This is in law, and we wanted to kind of share it with you in advance. Next, please. Thank you. Thank you for your time, and thank you for joining us. Back to you, Malia, Leslye. If there are any questions, feel free to ask. Otherwise, I'll be in room 3 and we will be able to answer these questions in room 3. Thank you, Malia. Leslye, back to you.
Thanks so much, Iqbal. So we have a few resources at your disposal. And so you'll have access to these, obviously, when you get the slides. And next slide. So you have access, you can link to CDE's FAQs. There'll be new FAQs coming soon. So constantly like check in there. You can obviously go to the CDE webpage, reach the CDE help desk, reach out to your SSCL regional contact. Some of them are here today, right? Answering questions in the chat, which is awesome. You can reach out to CAN. You can also look at the apportionments and entitlements. They're all linked here, and obviously the fireside chats. And now, next slide, please. Oh, just a reminder, right? SSCL is here to support you. And I think we're passing it on over to Melissa, right?
Yep, I'm here. Thank you so much, Leslye, Malia, and Iqbal. We're hoping that the intent and the design of this particular topic was really not to review all of our nuts and bolts and program intros and whatnot, and like 101s, but to really build on what Sterling, who used to work for the California Department of Ed, and Heather Williams from CAN have previously presented on. And so we're hoping that our participants were able to learn of like what's happening now. What are some of those current events? What are things to look out on the horizon? And considering we're kicking off we're what, like a month and a half into a new school year, looking at what's to come for potential FPMs and whatnot. So really digging into the policy, legal, ed code items so that you can use that as a grounding and align that with your quality to make these high quality experiences for youth and families. So again, shout out to Malia, Leslye, and Iqbal for sharing all of the content with us. And there were a lot of links and resources in those slides. You will have access to all of that. So please do not worry about that. Before I move on to the next part of our workshop, again, shouting out our SSCL, System of Support for Expanded Learning. They are a great resource to support our LEA and community partners with any of the content that Malia, Leslye, and Iqbal covered. And so using them as a resource, really developing a relationship because they are a wealth of knowledge and support. And so we will continue to remind folks to connect with the SSCL. And in a moment, I'm going to ask for Tracey to come on camera. But before we jump into Tracey's field spotlight, this is a new element that we've added to the ELO-P academies. During the summer and during the summer season, we disseminated an outreach form to our field. It was a field response form, and we wanted to know, what did you all want as part of our ELO-P academies as our planning team design what the fall and spring academies would look like. And after reviewing all of the feedback, the number one thing that the field requested was hearing from folks from the field on what's working, perhaps a highlight, a promising practice, a resource, a tool that folks have created to support them in supporting the ELO-P program, supporting expanded learning, and ultimately using these programs as the drivers to really support youth and families in all of our communities here in California. So we developed field spotlights, promising practices in action, and each ELO-P workshop this fall, we will feature a leader throughout the state who is doing amazing things in their community. And they'll be speaking on a specific promising practice that has been helping them continue to develop their ELO-P program and provide quality experiences for children, youth, and families. So today I am honored and excited to introduce Tracey Humphreys from the Keys Union School District. She is an ELO-P district coordinator, and she will be jumping on the mic in a moment to chat a little bit about Keys Union School District and what her the expanded learning programs are doing in their school district to support children, youth, and families. And so welcome, Tracey. Passing it on to you.
Thank you, Melissa. I appreciate your kind words and your support. The whole team, actually. I'm honored to be asked to talk about what we do. Going back, I have said my why is to be what I needed. And it's not necessarily that I didn't get it, but just thinking of what did I need? What do, relating to what these kids need now, the same as, what did I need? I needed compassion and understanding and approval and a feeling of belonging. And I needed some extra opportunities. So with this money, we have our opportunity to provide opportunities for our students and our families. So as far as a promising practice, I'm just going to say ask. So I was inspired by Michael Funk. The first time I went to a summer institute here in Modesto, Michael Funk was the keynote speaker. And I had been a program leader in a middle school, and I was very new to after school after teaching preschool and being a stay-at-home mom. And I wasn't quite sure if it was where I wanted to be. And Michael spoke that morning, and his end line, he talked about his experiences in San Francisco and what he saw and his dream for after school. And I caught his passion. But what he said at the end was lead with love. And that resonated with me so deeply that it became like a focus. How do we bring more as far as love into these students' lives? And then in 2021, we were doing the virtual after school program, which is quite the challenge. And Michael started his fireside chats, there in 20. In 21, he started, this ELO-P thing started coming up, and he started talking about it. And he said things like, think of all the things you haven't been able to do because of your budget and do them. And imagine the possibilities. And lately he's been saying, if it doesn't say you can't, then you can. And all those things just say, think outside the box. Why not? So that has become my practice, is to ask, why not? What can we do? Why can't we do that? So I don't know how many of you haven't heard, but from Keys, we're in Central California. We have over 90-something% unduplicated pupils. Keys is not even a city. It's a town. Half of it doesn't have sidewalks. We got a lot of dogs roaming around. And we're just a little blip between Ceres and Turlock. Between our two schools, we have 700 students. We do have a home-based charter that adds about 300 students there. And in June, I say last school year, we took 29 middle schoolers and 11 chaperones to Disneyland on a 4-day trip. And it's really cool. At the board meeting last night, I was told that the kids that were in 8th grade in June are now in high school, and they're talking at the high school how much fun Disneyland was. And some of the things they talk about are, of course, the ride. And some of them weren't too impressed with the class that they did, but they talk about the hotel and having breakfast at the hotel and things like that. And that all started because when I was at Boost, I came around the corner and there was a Disneyland booth and they were giving away swag bags and I wanted one. And so I stood there and listened to what they had to say because I wanted the bag. And it wasn't even a possibility that we were going to go to Disneyland. Talking to Eric, coworker in Region 6, and he wanted to go. And I started thinking, could we do that? So I started talking to some teachers who've done some other trips. And, just every time there was well, what about this? Then, roadblocks are going to come up. And do you really want to get to your destination or do you want to turn around and go home? And I want to get to the destination. So when I see a roadblock, I just think, how do we need to pivot so that we can keep going forward? And, that whole thing about the SSEL team and the office hours, that is so completely true. You all as a team have helped me get there because I ask questions on those Friday afternoon office hour calls. And Jen Taylor from Region 3 popped a field trip guidance in the chat. And it can't be a reward. You can't use that money for a reward trip. So sometimes that's, it became not a reward, but everybody is able to apply. And then how do we qualify? How do we, make our selections? And so I would encourage all of you to just start asking, what can we do? How can we do this? And then get on those meetings and ask the team because they really are here to support us. And if you need ideas, talk to your students. I asked where they wanted to go for a field trip, and my 7th graders told me they missed the Monterey trip because of COVID. So that's how that Saturday family trip to Monterey to the aquarium, we took 2 buses, 100 and some families drove themselves. And the board president pointed out last night that his words were, we know some of those families have cars that wouldn't make it to Monterey, but they were able to get on that bus and go. And they took lunches and they had a great time as a family. And we provided that for them. And we were able to do that because I asked a student, where would you want to go on a field trip? So the asking, the keep searching, keep listening when when parents complain because we don't have this, think, what if? Or why couldn't we do? And then also keep a list, whether it's in your phone. Mine is in my phone. Took a couple notes last night. Can we offer that? Can we cost share? Can we make that happen? And then I keep looking at my notes because it's a circus up there. When you hear staff complaining about how are we supposed to do this, think about the opportunities. Can we make it after school? Can we support that kind of thing? I just encourage everybody to, I'm gonna sound like Michael Funk here, but let's just do it. And it's been said, I hear so many times, that money is not gonna last forever. So what? If it lasts another 3 years, let's make it the best 3 years for these students, because we have the opportunity to broaden their horizons, to give them things that will strengthen their foundation that can change the world. And it can happen in outside of school time. So when you go to your board, they might not be sure. If you're asking them to stretch, they might ask you, would we be in compliance? So know your ed code, know your, talk to your CAN team, your SSEL. Danielle has been wonderful. Thank you, Danielle Jones. I'll call her and I'll say, what about this? How can we do this? And instead of can we, let's say, how can we? Let's just do it. Want to make sure I said everything I wanted to say. Celebrating last night, our second annual Southern California trip was board approved. So we are going next June to Universal Studios. That will be our key educational component. We're doing a backlot tour that focuses on the career opportunities. And the child shall remain nameless, but I think specifically of a 7th grade student who doesn't fit in, but he is an incredible artist. And in this day, it used to be you had to move to Hollywood to get a job in Hollywood, but I can totally see this kid doing something else during regular job time or whatever, but the opportunity to freelance with his art in animation or in anything is just a fantastic opportunity for him to learn. And then we'll tie it in the educational part as far as careers. I plan to do scavenger hunts through the parks and look at careers in both parks, because Universal Studios will be the first day and then Disneyland the second, because you got to go to Disneyland if you're down there. So just don't stop. Keep going and ask yourself, what would be the worst that would happen if the answer was no? What would it be like? And then what would be the best that would happen if the answer is yes? And thank you. And I will try to answer questions if anybody has any.
Thank you so much, Tracey. How do you feel?
I feel good. I don't know if I covered everything in my notes, but hopefully I said enough.
Well, I'm going to say what I heard out loud. There's some I don't know, try to always key takeaways to things. And so thank you for sharing your story and introducing us and welcoming us into your program virtually, and learning of all the ideating to allow these types of like active learning opportunities that one might not have thought was possible. And so here are my 4 key takeaways, and I encourage our participants to jump into your note stock, there's a note section there that maybe you heard Tracey say something that resonated and you might want to think more about when you're back in your program. So here are my top 4. Youth and family voice. You talked about asking the youth, right? The students in your program, where might you want to go? If a parent maybe didn't have the most positive things to say, what might they want, and how can you activate that in your program? Second thing, make a list. For those of you that know me, you know I'm all about those lists and making them however they're useful for you. So making that list of the could be's and the what ifs, right? Third is how can we make this happen? Not can we make this happen? Because that really shifts that mindset of how can we do this? What steps might we consider? What clarification do we need? And then the last thing that I'm just taking away from your gems today, Tracey, is out of school time programs have the opportunity to transform lives. And so I thank you for sharing your spotlight with us today and your promising practices. And congratulations on your board approvals and all of the amazing work that you will continue to do along with your team to support students, children, youth, and families in the Keys community.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tracey. All right, so we are on time. Look at us. Few other things before we jump into breakout rooms. We also are inviting folks to attend another virtual workshop. If this is something that you're interested in, you can use the bit.ly or scan the QR code. CAN, along with our partners at the California Youth Opioid Response Network, will be co-facilitating a workshop on the power of expanded learning to support substance use interventions, health, mental health, and thriving families. And so you'll be able to connect with other leaders throughout the state and hear of some stories about folks who have been impacted by the youth opioid crisis here in California, and how California expanded learning programs can be used as an asset to really support youth and families work through some of these challenges. And so we encourage you to attend. That is on Wednesday, September 25th from 10:30 a.m. to 12 p.m. And you can register today if you'd like. And also, you don't want to miss it. Our 2025 Site Coordinator Symposium is in February. We'll be virtually on February 5th, and then in person in Sacramento on February 7th through 8th at the SAFE Convention Center and at the Sheraton Hotel. The link is available in the resource doc that we shared, and you can also scan our QR code. Early registration closes this Friday, so you want to lock in that discounted registration rate. General registration will open the day after. And so we hope to see you at the Site Coordinator Symposium. If you're interested in submitting a workshop proposal, that is open. You can visit the link on our website and you have all the details you need to stay connected and attend the symposium. And in CQI fashion, right, we mentioned earlier, we live and breathe continuous quality improvement culture. And so we have our feedback form here. The caveat here, if you are planning to attend our other ELO-P Academy workshops, we encourage you to complete it after the last workshop that you attend, just because it's one form for all 4 workshops. And so if you're only planning to attend today, please give us your feedback. You can scan the QR code. The link is in our resource doc, and then we'll also drop it in the chat for ease and flow. And we designed these workshops based off of your feedback. So highly encourage you to take 3 to 5 minutes to give us your feedback. Thank you. Okay, so what we are going to do now, and this will take a few minutes, so we'll have about 15 to 20 minutes in breakout. So In a moment, I will pop up a slide on how to access breakout rooms. And these breakout rooms are kind of a choose your own adventure. And so if you would like to learn more or just hear from others, engage in dialogue about the SSEL and how you can learn more about how to stay connected with them and who they are, how to connect with them, I encourage you to join room 1, learn more about the SSEL. Breakout rooms are not open quite yet. So once we get those up open, you'll be able to see them. Room 2 will support ELO-P basics. And so Leslye and Malia went over an intro to expanded learning and ELO-P. So if that's something that you're interested in learning more about or have some of those in the weed questions, again, encouraging you to attend office hours where you can have a little more time. We'll have about 15 minutes in these breakouts. And then in room 3, if you want to chat with Iqbal a little bit more about FPM and audit promising practices and ask some of those questions, you can join Lupita and Iqbal in room 3, and they'll be happy to support you. And then Malia and Leslye will be supporting policy events and updates and chatting more about the SOC code. So if you have some questions about all of the content that they covered today with maybe budget trailer bills or different ed code questions, you can jump into room 4. For folks who are somewhat newer to how to access breakout rooms, so this is if you don't know how to do it, you can go scroll to the bottom of your Zoom screen, and in a moment you'll see breakout rooms as an icon there that you can click on. And then you'll be able to, it's a little fuzzy here, but you'll be able to hover over the breakout room that you would like to attend and click join. And it might take a moment for you to be able to connect, but you'll be connected there. Another way to join breakout rooms is you can rename yourself. If you're unfamiliar with this process, you can rename yourself by hovering over the top right corner of your Zoom square, your picture, or your video, and you can click on the 3 dots and scroll down to see rename, and you can rename yourself with the breakout room number that you want to go to, and we will get you connected to that breakout room. And then if those don't work for you, you can just hang out and we'll ask you what breakout room you want to get to, and we'll do our best to support you there. So I'm going to go ahead and put this back up. Our Zoom will close in the breakout room, so you will not need to come back to this main room. Before we do that, I just want to say one more time, gratitude, deep gratitude to our presenters today, Leslye Lugo, Malia Villarreal, and to Iqbal Badwalz, and also to our spotlight presenter, Tracey Humphreys. Thank you for your time and sharing all of your knowledge, wisdom, and expertise with us. And thank you to our participants for joining us. We'll go ahead and open up breakout rooms, and we hope you join us tomorrow. Have a great time, everyone.